Okay, thank you. Call the February 7th Education and Higher Education Committee meeting to order now. Today we'll be looking back at what works, and we'll be also looking at early learning efforts and what other states are doing. We've got 4 speakers. We're not hearing any bills today. I do want to try to keep them, we got each speaker at 15 minutes. We want to try to keep it to that because we do have a committee meeting right after this, and we had a issue with our voting bell in the Senate chamber today, so everything kind of got delayed, so I apologize for that. But we'll get going today. The first person, well, first of all, I'd like to call on Senator Hickman to say the prayer for us.
Yeah, let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this great day, Lord. Thank you that you have set aside our time, Lord, to talk about our children in Georgia, Lord, and our future and creating an educated workforce. Lord, we just ask you to please be with the speakers today, Lord. Just help them enunciate and help them to help us learn more, Lord, about how we can help these children. Lord, we love you and praise you. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Our first speaker is Amy Jacobs with Georgia Pre-K.
Oh, there she is. I wonder where she was.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think they're pulling up my presentation. So sorry. What a way to start. Well, and again, good afternoon. Thank you for having me and inviting me to present and share a little bit about the Department of Early Care and Learning and the services that we provide that directly impact literacy development for young children. I want to do a quick overview of what the Department of Early Care and Learning is. We have a budget of about $238 million, and we are very fortunate. We are one of few states with an agency dedicated to early childhood education. We get calls almost monthly from other states wanting to replicate what we have in our Department of Early Care and Learning. And again, we administer and regulate critical early education programs that support families with very young children. I like to talk about us as the state's Birth to 5 early learning agency, and the programs we focus on serve children who are birth to age 5. So their infants, their toddlers, and their preschoolers, and of course, their families that go with them. We do a lot at DeKalb. We're probably best known for Georgia's pre-K program, which is 30 years old, which I will talk a little bit about later. But we also license over 4,000 child care programs throughout the state. So these are child care centers, and they're also family child care learning homes. And this is really important because this makes sure that we have healthy and safe child care programs for young children. We monitor them at least twice annually and, of course, investigate any complaints. And that health and safety piece is truly the foundation to everything else we do at DeKalb. We also administer child care and parent services, which is our subsidy program, which I'll talk about a little bit later. We have Quality Rated, which is our rating and improvement system for child care programs. Another program that you may not know that we administer are 2 nutrition programs. One is the Child and Adult Food Care Program, where we provide reimbursement for meals for low-income families that are in child care programs. And we also have a Happy Helpings program through the USDA, where we work with nonprofits and community partners to provide foods during the summer months when children are out of school and don't have access to meals. And between these 2 programs on an annual basis, we're able to work with programs to serve over 80 million meals to young children. We also house the Head Start State Collaboration Office. We offer inclusion and behavior supports through a team of specialists who work directly with classroom teachers to include children of all ability levels and also help with challenging behaviors that may occur in the classroom. We have a team of specialists that work directly with infant and toddler teachers. We coordinate the state's infant early childhood mental health work, which is recent and new to us. We are bringing awareness of what we mean by infant and early childhood mental health trying to raise awareness so we can build the workforce and then also work on financing for those services that these young children may need. We also support the workforce of all these child care programs in pre-K, and we have several quality initiatives and grant funding that I will talk about a little bit later in more detail. Again, this just shows you a breakdown of our budget by fund source. 50.7% of our funding comes from the federal government. 42.7% comes from the state lottery, which goes directly to Georgia Pre-K. We receive 6.5% of state general funds, so $61.4 million of state general funds, and we have a small amount of other dollars. So these programs and this funding support access to high-quality early education, and this is important because 90% of brain development takes place from birth to age 5, and the environment and the experiences impact that brain development. We also know that early education is associated with improved academic achievement, cognitive development, self-regulation skills, and social-emotional development. All children benefit from high-quality preschool or early education, but children from low-income families and dual language learners benefit even more. We also know that children who enter kindergarten ready to succeed are more likely to read on grade level by 3rd grade, graduate from high school, go to college, and be productive members of the workforce. So high-quality early education truly sets the future and the foundation for success for young kids. When we talk about literacy development, which is what I know you're all here to talk about for young children, again, children birth to age 5, so infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, these are really important points to put everything into context. Reading development starts at birth. Brains, especially in young children, are wired to learn language. Language is the foundation for reading and is set long before a child enters kindergarten. Very young learners, even a few months old, are already acquiring the skills and tools necessary for reading. And what does that look like when you're talking about an early education classroom? These are children, young children, interacting with adults and other children through story time, songs, rhymes, talking, and play. This chart shows you an example of milestones that children should meet which directly support literacy development. Obviously, there are all types of milestones. It could be cognitive, it could be movement, but this is specifically on literacy. And these milestones are building a strong foundation for learning future literacy and language skills. You'll see at 2 months, a developmental milestone that's directly related to literacy is a 2-month-old that would make sounds other than crying and reacts to loud sounds. For a 2-year-old, he or she could point to things in a book when you ask, like, where's the bear, and uses more gestures than just waving and pointing, like blowing a kiss or nodding yes. And at 4 years old, a developmental milestone for the literacy development component, they can say a sentence with four or more words, says some words from a song, story, or nursery rhyme, talks about at least one thing that happened during their day, like I played soccer. And this is just an important context as I share the programs and services that DECAL provides to support literacy. We also have the Georgia Early Learning and Development Standards, which we call GELDS, which align directly with the DOE K-12 standards. And this shows the developmentally appropriate teaching standards we use for different ages. You'll see at the top, it starts 0 to 12 months, and there's a path along the way, and it ends down at the bottom right corner with 48 to 6 months. So for example, the standards for an infant not quite 12 months old, we want them to be able to listen to simple nursery rhymes, songs, and charts. If you look down at the bottom for 24 to 36, so 2 years to 3 years old, they should be experimenting with rhyming words. And then if you go all the way to a 4-year-old to a 5-year-old, the 48 to 60 months, our standards include manipulating, blending sounds, so that phonemic awareness that we all know is important for literacy development. So now I'm going to shift to the program that has been supporting language and literacy development, math, science, social studies, art, physical development, and social emotional development for 30 years in Georgia, and that's Georgia's pre-K program. As you know, our pre-K program is funded through appropriation by you all, but through the Georgia Lottery. We've been in existence since 1992 and have served over 1.8 million 4-year-olds in high-quality learning environments. And we know through research, which I'll share in a moment, that our pre-K program prepares children for kindergarten across all domains of learning. You'll see on the right a map, and this is our saturation rate map. So this shows you the number of 4-year-olds that are served in pre-K in each county. It's important to note that pre-K is offered in 159 counties, and we do that through either public schools or private child care settings. So the pandemic has definitely impacted enrollment in Georgia pre-K. Historically and very regularly, we serve about 80,000 four-year-olds in Georgia pre-K, but the pandemic, we hit a low in fiscal year 2021 with only about 63,000 four-year-olds. It has begun to creep back up, and this year, as of our last roster count, we are at about 73,463. So we estimate that to be about 54% of four-year-olds. We hope to get back, of course, to the 80,000, which is about 60% of four-year-olds in Georgia. So I mentioned the research on Georgia's pre-K program, and a key strength of the pre-K program is really building that foundational language and literacy skills for future reading. Our research consistently shows that Georgia pre-K provides a strong foundation that supports children's growth and development and prepares them for kindergarten. In fact, our research shows that children who go to Georgia pre-K make gains on all domains of learning above and beyond normal development. And we've also studied children with their end of grade, third grade tests right here in Georgia, and those children who attended Georgia pre-K did significantly better on that test than if they did not attend pre-K. Next, I want to talk about Quality Rated. This is another program that supports high-quality early learning. Quality Rated is our system to determine, improve, and communicate the quality of programs that provide child care here in Georgia. So this is a voluntary program that child care programs sign up for, and they want to go above and beyond those basic healthy and safety licensing standards. We launched this in 2012, so we are celebrating 10 years of Quality Rated. Have rated over 6,000 programs during that time. Right now, there are over 2,800 programs throughout the state who have received a 1, 2, or 3-star rating. So that means hundreds of thousands of children have access to high-quality early learning, which we know is impactful for brain development and the foundation for their future academic success. We also created a very specific program to offer additional support to infant and toddler teachers. When we look at the quality rated data, even after they're rated, we see that programs are rating lower in their infant and toddler classrooms. And this is not a Georgia-specific phenomenon. This is a national issue, and it's usually because infant toddler teachers are probably paid the least in a program. They work the hardest, and they have not a whole lot of access to professional development. So beginning in 2017, we created LITTLE, which is Lifting Infants and Toddlers Through Language-Rich Environments. We like a good acronym at DeKalb. And this supports language and literacy instructions in 2- and 3-star infant and toddler classrooms. And when we talk about language and literacy instruction for infants and toddlers, it's really important that you know what it means. We want it to be developmentally appropriate. We're not teaching reading or writing to infants and toddlers. But this is about responsive caregiving, so your interaction with your caregiver in the classroom. It's about the number of words that child is hearing on a regular basis. And it's also about those conversational turns, so the response from the child, from the teacher, and you want to have that back and forth. So this is high-quality professional development with weekly coaching sessions and then monthly literacy forums for program leaders and these infant and toddler teachers. This also includes literacy resources for classrooms, stipends for participants, fundings for a peer coach, and support for credential attainment. The peer coach is a really important piece of this. This is really a coaching model where we send our folks in to coach these teachers, and then we coach a peer coach that we hope stays in that program so they can continue to work with those teachers. Over the course of the program, we've served 159 programs, about 350 classrooms, and we've spent about $8 million on Project Little since the beginning. I want to talk a little bit about the results of this. We know that an infant classroom scores on responsive caregiving, that domain that we look at in our assessment, increased significantly from the beginning to the end of this project. Most teachers reported positive changes in their classroom practices that foster early language and literacy development. And participating teachers spoke over 250 million adult words and surpassed 5 million conversational turns. And those are big numbers over 5 years of a project. But the important piece is what we see in our data is that when we start and when we end, we're seeing an increase in words, and we're seeing an increase in responsive caregiving, and we're seeing an increase in conversational turns, which is exactly what we want to provide support for these infants and toddlers. Now, to further support language and literacy for young children, we created the Quality Rated Language and Literacy Endorsements in 2019. Governor Kemp asked us to create this additional recognition that is added to our quality rated system, and it's available to existing 2- and 3-star quality rated programs. This is a year-long experience of high-quality professional development for program leaders, for infant, toddler, and preschool teachers. It includes literacy resources, a technology grant, a growth materials package, and of course, stipends for participants. We piloted this back in the middle of the pandemic with 8 centers, and now we are into our first cohort of 22 centers and 11 family child care providers that are currently participating and should receive this endorsement this spring. We spend about $220 per cohort on this literacy endorsement. Also want to share the results of our pilot as well. So almost all teachers agree that the endorsement helped improve their classroom environment and their teaching practices, and their directors or the leaders in their building, that's what we call them in childcare, saw immediate improvements in quality teaching and practices. And then I will end with CAPS. So CAPS is our Child Care and Parent Services program. It is the state's child care substitute program. And while it does not provide instruction, it provides access to high-quality programs, and that's an important part of the literacy conversation. CAPS supports access to all of the programs that I mentioned. It assists no to low-income families with the cost of child care while they work or attend school. It helps families find that high-quality early learning environment where we know they see the greatest benefit. It utilizes a 2-gen approach because these young children obviously come with parents or adults in their lives, and so it's important that we're able to work with those families as well on what other supports that they may need to be successful and obtain family well-being and economic sustainability. We serve about 50,000 children per week on a usual basis. We have received some additional COVID dollars that allows us to serve about 60,000. We do provide an additional tier to our regular rate for quality rated providers because we recognize that quality cost. And usually we spend about $280 million on this program for the 50,000 children that we serve, but right now we're spending about $445 million due to the COVID relief funding. So I thank you. I wanted to make sure we had time for questions and for the other presenters, but I thank you for the opportunity to share with you a little about the programs that DCAL offers around literacy development.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the presentation. Appreciate all you're doing. I know there's continuous process improvement in everything you're doing. I just appreciate every year trying to get better. I don't expect you to have an answer for this, but this is maybe just putting a thought out there. It seems like, to me, the best, if we can influence this, and I just like your response to this, the best use of effort might be, when you look at how kids who come in maybe families where mom and dad both have a high level of education attainment, that kid is better prepared. It seems like the best impact we could have is teaching the behaviors that families with high level of education attainment have in parenting their kids, reading to their kids, talking to their kids, whatever those things are for the first 3, 4, 5 years of life, that if we could teach those, I know this is a bit of a cultural shift, but has any state or has anyone ever at scale tried to coach parents in a way of how to raise kids to make them read faster, understand numbers, manipulatives, all that stuff? Has anyone ever done that at scale, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, no. I do think a lot of that is definitely happening at the community level here in Georgia. I think home visiting is a resource that could be looked at that I know Dr. Toomey with the Department of Public Health is looking at, where you actually go in and help parents with those types of skills so that they understand what development looks like and how they can ensure that with their children. But I don't know about a state that's done that, no.
Because I know we're trying to create great institutions for the kids that check in, that are part of it, do right by them. I'm just thinking, you think about the curve of kids where mom and dad do certain behaviors. It's not that they necessarily get more attention from mom and dad. It's just there's certain behaviors in parenting that are learned that aren't learned in other places. And I just want you to think about how we would do that.
Sure.
Because I see a lot of families that their kids are not, mom doesn't have a educational attainment, dad doesn't. They're loving parents, but I don't see books around the house. There's certain things that are not happening that would seem to be coachable by loving parents, if we, so.
Thank you, Commissioner. I was going to go back to the chart that you showed us on about the decrease in the pre-K program, and just because of the COVID year. So we were at 2019. We were 60% of eligible children were in pre-K in
Yes.
Georgia, and then we're at 54, back up to 54 after dropping down.
Right.
What is the percentage of kids in Georgia that are in kindergarten?
I'm told that there is I'm not DOE, but I'm told that there's a small percentage decline in kindergarten enrollment, but I don't know that it's as large as the decline in pre-K enrollment. But that would be a DOE
I
question.
mean, do you have like an average of what number of the percentage of eligible children in Georgia that go to kindergarten?
I do not know that. No, I don't collect that data. That'd be Department of Education, or maybe GOSA.
Okay, all right.
However, I just had this conversation with DOE. There was a significant decline during the pandemic for various same reasons, pre-K, transportation, childcare, et cetera, et cetera. He said we can get those numbers next.
I'm just curious. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, I'm going to take two more questions. I got Senator Beach and then
Commissioner, thank you for this. On that last slide there on the CAPS program,
Yes.
there's $445 million in COVID money. What's the game plan when that money goes away, and is it going to affect us being able to serve 60,000
Yes.
children?
We will no longer be able to serve 60,000 children without the COVID dollars. Now, that's just the reality of it, because obviously that's a large increase from what we usually spend on CAPS. But I want to reassure you that we will not just kick kids off. We serve them for at least 12 months, and we'll recheck their eligibility at that 12-month period. But we will not be able to continue to serve 60,000 without additional state funding.
And do you need $445 million to do that? Or
Well, I think the discussion around CAPS is it's very easy to talk about the number of kids, which is very important. We always want to serve more kids and provide them with access to high quality early learning, but we also got to think about the rates that we pay.
Yeah.
They're pretty low. And we need to work on increasing those rates for providers because they're all quality rated now. They've all gone above and beyond. And so when we talk about CAPS, yes, additional funding is great, but let's talk about not just slots to serve more kids, but also increasing rates for providers.
does any lottery funding?
No, sir. This is
So
all
that's just
federal.
state funding and federal funding?
Federal and state, yes, sir.
Can the lottery fund any of this, or just pre-K?
Just pre-K.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Orrock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we're short on time. When pre-K was put in as part of Zell Miller's program for the proceeds from the lottery, it was described as universal pre-K, universal voluntary pre-K coverage. And we're far from being universal in the sense that it's what, 50 to 60% of the. And I appreciate you pointing out that we got a hourly pay issue as well as not reaching all the kids. So that would be a good place, would it not, for additional funds to flow into the pre-K program as we move forward?
You know, I think my two priorities for pre-K right now is obviously, well, let's say three, to get it back up to at least the 80,000. But we've also got to look at reducing class size. We're at 22 right now, which is too high.
Yep.
And we need to get back down to at least 20. It'd be nice to go lower than that. Now is the time to look at that since we do have decreased enrollment right now. I think it's a manageable thing to do. But we've also got to look at how do we build capacity, meaning how do we encourage public schools and private child care centers to build, to expand, to improve upon what they have, because that's the issue right now. That's why we're not, I think you probably would give us more slots if we needed more slots, but we can't put more, we don't have anywhere to put them. So we need to look at how we build that actual physical capacity, which we've never done before in Georgia pre-K.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We'll now hear from Joy Hawkins from the Governor's Office of Student Achievement.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairs and members of the committee. Thank you so much for your time and energy on this critical issue. We just could not be more thrilled to see the kind of interest about this issue that impacts all of us. And so today I'm representing the Governor's Office of Student Achievement. I'm Joy Hawkins. Appreciate your time again. With me today, I have two reading specialists, and we're going to talk about an initiative called Growing Readers that's been around since 2015. Kathy Matthews and Christy Kuber from Metro RESA were originally on the design team and continue to man and update this initiative on an annual and regular basis. So I'm thrilled to hear from them today. When we were asked to present, one of the areas that we were asked to present about is best practices in instruction. And that's what you're going to hear today. We base this initiative on the latest and best science as well as pedagogy. And so you're going to hear these specialists talk about the evolution of sort of the sciences of reading over time and how we're continuously updating that in this system that we call Growing Readers. The essence of this initiative is that we teach and instruct K through third grade teachers on reading instruction. And like I said, it's been with us for 15 years, and we continue to have proof points and great results every year. So just a couple of statistics before we get started. For the 2021-23 two-year cohort, here are some numbers. And I want you to bear in mind that for the state's investment of $1.6 million, this is what you're getting, along with a $2 million influx of federal funds. So we serve 16 RESAs, 100%. 38 growing reader specialists have been developed. 37 teacher candidates have been identified and trained. 99 schools and 41 school districts. 793 K through 3 teachers, and listen to the impact. Over 12,237 students have been impacted by the system of instruction delivery. And so I am just so thrilled to have these specialists with us, and their cheerleader, Leanne Putman from Metro RESA, as well as Stacy Lutz from GOSA and Jackie Lundberg from GOSA. So we appreciate this. And, hopefully we'll have a few minutes for questions, but they timed it. We're at 14 minutes and 30 seconds. So without further ado, I think I took the 30 seconds.
Hello, my name is Kathy Matthews, and this is
Christy Keeper.
And we are so thankful for the opportunity to speak to you today. And we are so appreciative of the fact that you are taking the time to hear from all of these agencies across the state to find out what's going on in literacy improvement across the state and also how we can continue to enhance it. So thank you for this opportunity. We'll start by saying that Growing Readers is a partnership approach. And we could not be more thankful for our two major partners, the Georgia Department of Education and the Governor's Office of Student Achievement. They have been true partners in this work, and we thank you for that. It is not just, here, we'll give you money and you go off and do it. We work together, and we are so appreciative to the support, the evaluation, the cheerleading, and all of those things that those two agencies have done for us. They have allowed the Georgia RESA network of 16 RESAs across the state to implement a project across the RESAs that's common. And that has been a powerful experience for all of us. We design and implement the work and then take it out to the districts across the state. We also have worked very hard to support the Get Georgia Reading campaign. We are just a small support to the third pillar of professional learning. And we have been so grateful to Cox Campus for being a thought partner in this work with us, because we have grown and learned from that engagement and partnership. These are those districts, those 61% of Georgia districts across the state of Georgia that we have served over the past 8 years with Growing Readers. Although we don't serve every district, we are working in one or more, every school, we are working in one or more schools in the district across the state. Got me nervous, don't you? So what we want to do today is there is just a wealth of information out there. And the science of reading is an interdisciplinary body of research that is informing what we do in our project and across the state of Georgia. And what we want to do is share 3 models of reading from that science that builds on each other to improve reading instruction. And more importantly, we want to talk about translating that research into classroom practice, that day-to-day work that happens in classrooms. And that's how we support teachers through Growing Readers. And finally, we want to share some lessons that we have learned over the course of the 8 years of working with teachers in classrooms with students, with you.
So Growing Readers is grounded on research, and as Kathy mentioned, we're going to look at 3 models of reading, and these models help us understand what skilled readers do. The first 2 models there, the Simple View and Scarborough's Rope, are by far the most recognized by educators today. The third model, the active view of reading, is more current research, but it also informs our work with teachers in Growing Readers. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 3-minute, 30,000-foot view of the 3 models, because I know you don't have time really to get into all of the science of research, but we do want you to have a little bit of it. And when we're going to go over the 3 models, and as we do that, we want you to think about your noticings and wonderings about the science, and also think about implications for classroom practice.
So what we know is that science isn't perfect. And we've also learned that it is self-correcting and ever-changing. And that informs us as developers of teachers.
And so we're going to look at the first model, the Simple View of Reading from 1986. And this model is, it's a very useful tool for conveying the necessity and importance of word recognition and language comprehension. It's written as an equation. So the way this model is read often is that word recognition times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. So you'd need to have both word recognition and language comprehension to get the product of reading comprehension. Think of the implications of this on classroom practice. If I'm a teacher, I'm going to guarantee that I will teach word recognition skills and develop those skills in my readers, as well as language comprehension skills. When we're thinking about children who are struggling with reading, we definitely want to, with this model, we're going to look at word recognition and language comprehension as the basis for how we support and determine interventions for struggling readers.
But the research has grown, and in 2001, Scarborough came up with Scarborough's Rope through her research. And what you see in this model is language comprehension and word recognition are still those 2 constructs that are critically important to skilled reading. But what she has shown so effectively in this model is how important it is that all of those skills work together. And then the word recognition and the language comprehension intertwine so that eventually we come up with that skilled reading and text comprehension as the product. It remains as the product in this model. But the language becomes increasingly strategic, and the word recognition should become increasingly automatic. But what we know is science is self-correcting and always changing.
So we've just reviewed 2 of the models, and our third model is the active view of reading. And what's important to understand about this model is it doesn't throw out the previous 2 models. It doesn't dispute the findings at all. What it does do, though, is it expands upon the active view or the simple view of reading in Scarborough's Rope. And it does this in 3 ways. The first is that it recognizes that that we have children out there who have strong word recognition skills and strong language comprehension that still have difficulty reading. This model also identifies, remember how we said in the equation that, and in Scarborough's rope, that the two are separate? So we had word recognition and language comprehension. In this model, what she's identified is some overlap. And so that overlap she calls as bridging processes between word recognition and language comprehension. And the final thing is that there's a growing body of research out there that has demonstrated that skilled readers are highly active, strategic, and engaged. And they deploy executive skills that help them manage reading. So there's a whole nother piece to this next model of research.
So as you can see, in the blue is word recognition. It's still there. Language comprehension is still there. But what is included now are those bridging processes that Christy described. And then that active self-regulation work, that monitoring our processes of reading, you see that the active self-regulation impacts word recognition, the bridging processes, and language comprehension. So there needs to be something to monitor all that work. And those are those active self-regulation skills. And finally, notice that reading is no longer reading comprehension. That's because what has happened is reading comprehension has moved on the other side of the equation in this particular view, which means we should be teaching strategies for reading comprehension, along with the word recognition and the deep language comprehension work. So this has delineated a very complex process of reading that was started as a simple view and just grew and grew as the research grew. And so we can't walk away and say, I'm going to hand that to every teacher in every classroom and expect them to do this. So what we want to share with you today is how Growing Readers translates that research into practice. And so Joy went over these cohort statistics, and that is just for the current cohort. But we want to talk about Growing Readers as a system of improvement. And so Growing Readers stands on a strong foundation for implementation. What we know is that the research should constantly drive what we do in our off-site professional learning. And so our off-site professional learning grows with the research. So it's always changing, just like the science. And off-site professional learning is followed up with on-site coaching. So we have 4 cycles in our 2-year initiative. And each cycle includes the same thing: off-site training for teachers. And then once they leave our training, they know what to do in their classrooms. And then we go in and provide that on-site coaching and support to help them translate that information into practice in their classrooms. What we have found is that on-site coaching is the secret sauce. It is what translates that research to true practice in the classroom. And so we also recognize in our system of professional learning and improvement that leadership matters, and we must engage the principals and the district leaders with this project in order to be successful.
Oh, that's me. So the next COG is a comprehensive evaluation, and we're very grateful to the Governor's Office of Student Achievement for designing a comprehensive evaluation that we can use to grow and revise in real time. They collect multiple pieces of data throughout the year that address teacher perception and leader perception, teacher knowledge, implementation of practices at the teacher level as well as at the specialist level, and as well student achievement and growth. In our last comprehensive evaluation, which was before the COVID interruption, the results from after the 2 years said that 70% of our students increased in their reading achievement by a minimum of 1 year's growth. And that brings me to our last COG, because our last COG addresses our growth so that we can better support teachers. And we don't want to stop until it's 100% of students making that kind of progress. And in the last cog, John Maxwell says that you can't grow others until you grow yourself, and that growth has to be intentional. So we spend a lot of time as specialists and candidates from the school systems growing ourselves. How can we really dig into the research and understand it? And how does that impact our trainings? How can we model for teachers those effective practices that allow teachers to implement the research? We also focus on our professional development regarding professional learning in the sense that we try to learn moves about that impact our facilitation skills when we're off-site, as well as when we're coaching in the classrooms. And the last thing that we focus on learning about is large-scale implementation. How do we get this across the state in the most effective and efficient way? So we've been blessed that the governor's office has allowed us time to really study and learn from experts out there. So we've grown quite a bit if you saw us 8 years ago. So,
Yeah, you wouldn't recognize us.
no. So anyhow, with all that said, we don't like to refer to ourselves as experts, but endless learners. And we are endless learners who truly believe in teachers and the power of knowledgeable, skilled, and confident teachers.
Teaching reading is hard. Teaching K through 3 is difficult, and it requires support. And we have got wonderful educators in the state of Georgia, and we want to build those teachers in our state, and we want to give them additional confidence that what they are doing is aligned to the current research. So we have learned just a few things that are essential for supporting teachers. And we've learned that professional learning for growth is focused on and provides deep learning. And we're going to go fast. It's grounded in the most current research, and most importantly, it translates that research to practice. And we know that it takes time to implement and time to get this work into classrooms. We also value the teachers as professionals. We recognize their knowledge and their skill, and we grow them from exactly where they are, just as we want to grow our readers in the classroom. We also recognize that it is critical to have coaching support right there beside teachers in the classroom, and we have to have resources to support. It's been said that learning to read without books is like learning to swim without water. So we have to have those resources in the classroom.
So this is an exciting time for educators. In my career, this is the first time that there's been such a focus on research and what it can do for us. And so what we've learned in Growing Readers is to expect change and to embrace it and recognize that the research builds on previous research. We don't have to take a do this, don't do that attitude. It can be, you know, we're learning, and as research grows, it's much easier to make those tweaks to practice to address the current research than to throw out everything. And yes, and we try to stay grounded, and what we've learned is that the greatest enemy of learning is knowing.
And so we are open to new learning, and we are open to continue growing with the research. And we just want to thank you for being open and willing to listen to all of these agencies across the state. It says a lot of you about our leaders in this state that you are willing to do that. More information can be found at these links that you have included in the PowerPoint. And we just thank you for your time today. And
Thank you all
sorry,
so
we went
much.
a little over.
No worries. I'll take 2 questions if we're running out of time. So what I'll do is, if there's further questions afterwards, I'll get the questions from the committee and we'll ask them and get responses. Senator Hickman.
Yeah, thank y'all again for being here. It's exciting stuff. But, you know, tell me, where are we at as far as teaching teachers how to read? What percentage are we? 60% there, 20% there? What's the number? And what is? I saw on the map a while ago some dark blue areas, some light areas. My personal county was light area. So where are we at on that?
Well, we serve, as far as Growing Readers, we serve all of the districts who are willing to participate and enough that we have funds for. Because part of the investment in growing readers is in the people to serve the teachers. So we have gotten to a lot of teachers over the past 8 years, but we have a long way to go. And that's why we do also rely on other agencies to continue to support this. We can only provide support for what we have the funds to support. And so the numbers are based on what we can support through our work.
And what are those numbers?
Back to,
Percentage-wise?
Currently, 99 schools in the state are in the cohort.
99 in school?
99 schools, but it's not
783 teachers.
783 teachers.
Out of how many teachers? So my point is, it's really a very small percentage. It's a great
It
program,
is.
but it's a very small percentage of where we at.
It is, but we also try to build capacity within the schools.
right.
And the districts.
Yeah, so we got a long ways to go.
We do, yes.
Okay,
I can just point out, that number is just based on
2 years.
yeah.
Back to 2015, we can get you the total number. Still have a long way to go, but it's an investment in human capital that this is state.
Oh, no question, man. No question of words, investment, not an expense, because we've said that many times. And I know that I've talked to our chancellor many times, and he is very, very concerned that the teachers coming out of schools now, university colleges, are not being taught how to teach our children how to read. And that's very much a focus of his. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We're going to move on to our next speaker. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
We're running out of time, but I got Ariane Weldon for Get Georgia Reading is our next speaker. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Dixon and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Ariane Weldon, and I'm with Georgia Family Connection Partnership. We serve as the backbone organization for the Get Georgia Reading campaign. Today, I will share a little about the value of early literacy, many of the factors that influence it, and how partners have come together to create and implement a framework for action across systems, sectors, and communities. As you've heard in previous hearings, third grade reading is predictive of high school graduation and other critical life outcomes. But there's even more to why this matters. What if I told you it's also a tool to equalize opportunity and achievement? Why? Here's why. Our partners at GOSA analyzed the third grade reading scores and high school graduation rates of more than 98,000 students in Georgia. Not only was there a significantly higher graduation rate among students who read proficiently by the end of third grade by a nearly 30 percentage point difference, the results remain consistent when accounting for poverty, English learner status, disabilities, and race. What these slides reveal is no matter your situation or station in life, if you read proficiently by the end of third grade, you're just far more likely to be in the game. In other words, literacy is the great equalizer. And every student that doesn't complete high school costs our society nearly $300,000 in lost earnings, taxes, and productivity. With nearly 1 million children in Georgia under the age of 9, that has significant and long-term consequences for our state and future. This is why, in 2013, state and community leaders formed the Get Georgia Reading campaign. For the first time, along with leadership from the governor's office, education policy and decision makers joined together with health, child welfare, nonprofit partners, and others. Together, they took on early literacy to rewrite our story, not only as an education issue, but as an urgent priority for all who care about children's health, well-being, and the future of our state. Everyone agreed we needed a new approach. Together, we launched a discovery process, starting with this question: what factors influence a child's path to literacy? Together, we discovered more than a dozen factors, but let's look at just a few. First, maternal education and adult literacy. The mother's level of education is one of the most powerful predictors of their child's literacy outcomes, indicating the need for two-generation approaches that support family literacy. Another factor is preterm birth, which is on the rise in Georgia. Compared to children born at term, which is 39 to 40 weeks, there's a significant risk of not achieving expected levels in reading among those born preterm. We actually have communities in Georgia where more than 20% of our babies are born preterm. This matters because at 35 weeks, an infant's brain weighs only 2/3 of what it will weigh just a few weeks later. Another factor is quality child care, which has significant lasting benefits, including healthy social and emotional development, decreased behavior problems, and improved language development. And why language development? It's actually one of the most powerful predictors of literacy outcomes. And it includes not only the early years, also the early grades. Before a child can communicate by reading and writing, they need to communicate their thoughts and feelings through gestures and other nonverbals, vocalizations and words, understand what others are communicating to them, and respond in ways that fit the situation. I've brought a handout, the language development by age band from birth to 18, to provide you with more details about language development. Moreover, language development has a demonstrated protective effect on children's mental health. Findings from a study of 265,000 5-year-old children reveal that children with typical language development were 19 times more likely to have positive mental health than children without typical language development. And the impact continues. By the end of elementary school, 61% of students with typical language development achieved the expected standard in literacy compared to only 15% of those without. Even the environment in which a child is learning has a positive impact, and a powerful impact at that. Data indicate that schools with the highest climate rating of 5 achieved ELA proficiency 3 times higher than schools with a climate rating of 1. Health barriers to learning are prevalent and persistent health conditions that, when left unaddressed, can interfere with a child's ability to learn and learn to read, such as vision and hearing problems, uncontrolled asthma, untreated dental problems, and food insecurity. In many Georgia communities, prevalence of these conditions is upwards of 15 to 25%, in some cases higher. And regarding vision and hearing, most states have a more comprehensive approach. I've provided to you a summary of research and information from several other southern states to provide you with more details. We realized we were approaching literacy as simply an education issue, but really it's a systemic issue. Getting more kids to read takes more than good schools, more than great teachers, and more than loving parents. It takes all of us working together. After reaching a shared understanding of the range of factors that affect a child's path to literacy, campaign partners created a framework for action. This framework has 4 pillars. The 4 pillars define the conditions that must be in place so that all our children are on a path to literacy. Let's walk through the definitions. First, language nutrition. All children experience abundant, positive, language-rich social interactions with caregivers, educators, and peers. Access. All children and their families have access to and support for healthy development, emotional well-being, and educational achievement. Positive learning climate. The expectation that all children feel safe and nurtured from the early years through the early grades so they can learn and grow both emotionally and academically. And fourth, teacher preparation and effectiveness. All caregivers, that includes parents as caregivers, and educators, are equipped with evidence-informed skills to effectively engage all children through developmentally responsive practice. The 4 pillars provide a shared language and understanding across all sectors, fostering unprecedented partnerships, encouraging continued engagement and innovation, creating new opportunities for change, and helping prevent the natural tendency to drift toward working in silos. Together, the 4 pillars are Georgia's framework for action, and together, we're working in ways we never knew we could. Cabinet members and partners have been integrating the 4 pillars into plans, proposals, funding opportunities, and service strategies. Communities across the state are also taking action to get Georgia reading. More than 120 communities and growing across Georgia use the 4 pillars as a framework for action through their L4GA plans through DOE, Deal Center collective impact strategies such as the BASICs, DeKalb Early Education Community Partnerships and Community Transformation Grants, TCSG Family Literacy Initiatives, Georgia Family Connection Collaborative Annual Plans, and more. Here is just a sampling of innovations using the 4 pillars as a framework for action across the state. The Department of Education, Georgia Public Broadcasting, and Georgia Family Connection Partnership teamed up to support learning at home. The Getting Ready Guides provide activities aligned with academic standards that parents and caregivers can do offline, at home and offline, to help get their children ready for their next grade from K through 3. Heard County Baby Braves, Jones County Growing Greyhounds, Cook County Baby Hornets, and the Lanier County Baby Bulldogs are partnerships initiated by school system leadership with community partners to reach out to families with newborns and provide home visits, community events, educational materials, and parenting information with the goal of engaging with families across the community long before their formal school journey begins. One of the toughest times for kids is summer, when access to learning and food is hard and too many kids fall behind. DeKalb and DOE teamed up with the Georgia Public Library Service to increase access to healthy meals and literacy in the summer months. Over time, we've grown from 0 to more than 100 libraries participating, reaching thousands more children. And Early County Family Connection is reaching families with the basics by embedding these practices into their local WIC program. And because of engagement in the campaign, Atlanta Fulton Family Connection joined together with Atlanta Technical College to establish the first certified literate community program in Fulton County. From 2015 to 2019, collective efforts likely contributed to a 5 percentage point increase in ELA proficiency. So we had some indication we're on the right path. We all know that pandemic learning loss will impact the growth we are seeing. However, the pandemic made this work even more important, and the 4 pillars provided a framework for action for state and local leaders to focus on what works. The journey continues. We're grateful for your interest in this work, your support of many campaign partners, and look forward to building on what works together. And together we can rewrite Georgia's story so that all our children starting from birth are on a path to literacy by the end of 3rd grade, paving the way to improved outcomes throughout school and life. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions?
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Do you have any idea how much or where the resources are to, put books in people's homes for small kids? I mean, you think about, salary cost, building cost, and, $350 a square foot to build a building now for capital outlay. I mean, it seems like if we bought, Harry the Dirty Dog and the Grinch, in mass, and gave them to families that don't have books. I mean, there's houses you go to, there's just not books in the house. But I mean, it seems like return on investment on that is the best money we could ever buy, but there's not a delivery system to push books into homes and say, read to your kids stuff. Is that, I mean, and it's not an indictment. Am I right that there's no real system to do that at scale like we could, or what are we doing?
So there are several examples of initiatives underway. So one is First Readers that does and communities are really initiating efforts. Sometimes you try to target the whole community, but in many ways they're doing strategic partnerships to reach the hardest to reach and the most in need. And there's Dolly Parton Imagination Library. So there are different efforts that are doing just like what you're asking in terms of birth to 5, a book a month from birth to 5, and then things you can do with that. And what I think has also been interesting is the way that these programs have partnered with others. So have partnered with family literacy programming, have partnered with other to really be able to be a little bit more comprehensive. So there's several examples of communities across Georgia that we can bring back to you.
So if we've got, if 60, a cohort of kids in Georgia is about 100,000 kids, is that about what it is? You know, one-year cohort, 120,000 kids? I mean, of those, I'm just asking, of those kids, what percentage of those kids are getting a book a month? Or what percentage of those kids, do we send does the uninvited box show up? You open it up and there's 15 books and they're classics. They're not the weird book that somebody that just graduated from their program, just produced and they hustled to get it pushed out. But I'm talking about classic books that are great ones, right? That we would all recognize. Is that ever been talked about doing at scale where we write, it's a line item that we spend, $20 million a year, $10 million a year doing that so that this cohort of 100,000 kids a year have this stuff? I mean, when my son was born in Savannah, they gave him a Baby Einstein CD from Zell Miller. But other than that classical music CD, we were never sent stuff.
Right.
It's just an idea. I just feel like it's not if it's not in the cultural norms of a family to buy books and to inherit books from others and cousins and stuff, they're just not in the house.
Yeah, I think what you're also pointing out is the importance of some of the family literacy initiatives and the 2-generation initiatives that are going on with TCSG and early childhood that incorporate that as well. And be glad to try to get some more information for you about the programs that are reaching and what percent that is, and reach out to partners and try to provide that information to you.
Thank you. That would be great. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Our last speaker is Stephen Pruitt.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee for having us come. I'm Stephen Pruitt, President of the Southern Regional Education Board. We are an interstate compact that literally exists to support you guys and help bring to you research and what's going on in other parts of our region. So I'm going to try to be brief. I know that you guys are on a little bit of a time zone because I believe people have this room next. So let me start by just saying this. Some of the lessons we've learned, putting very simply, are first, education is not rocket science because rocket science is easier. Second, courage matters. Third, no great education idea ever died in the vision phase. And fourth, sorry. And fourth, you can develop great tools, but without great people, they might as well stay in the shed. So, I'm going to spend the bulk of my conversation today talking about Mississippi. That is the state that we have seen the most in terms of their growth. Mississippi, we call it the Mississippi Miracle, and when the NAEP results were released a while back, people started talking about the Mississippi Miracle. Well, what you're going to find is it wasn't really so much a miracle, it was a lot of hard work, and it took a lot of patience, and it took a lot of time. So I'm going to walk through here a little bit with just the things that happened over the course of time. It actually started back in '97 when the state decided to pilot student supports around dyslexia. In 2002, they did a study that found that undergraduate education majors were unprepared to teach reading. In 2003, the state board began to require 2 years of early literacy courses for future K-6 teachers. In 2009, they had a state-funded screening for all K-3 students in literacy and math. In 10 and 11, they had state-adopted new college and career ready standards and did statewide workshops. They required dyslexia screening interventions for students in kindergarten and first grade. In 2013, they adopted and implemented the Mississippi Literacy-Based Promotion Act and new levels of student support. I'm going to pause right here to say all of these things that happened were deliberate. There was not a, let's do this year. There was actually a commitment that started in the late 90s that said, as a state, we know that we are at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, let's face it, and I'm not being ugly here. At one point or another in Georgia, we've all said the words, thank God for Mississippi. I mean, it's a reality. But the other reality is right now where they are with literacy, we think, God, I wish we were Mississippi because they have made so much progress. But what you see in these is there's a policy made, there is a study done to see if that policy is actually making sense, if it's actually making a difference, and then they keep building over time. This has obviously passed over many different legislatures, different governors, different state school superintendents. In 2014, they did a statewide early literacy professional development, and it began in K-3 because, in short, you can say we're going to have this new, for new teachers, but the practicing teachers far outnumber the number of new teachers that are coming in. So when new teachers come in, if we have other teachers that don't buy in or they're not trained in how to really teach reading, guess what happens over time? Over time, those more let's say, concrete practices kind of stay concrete. So what Mississippi did was they said, we're not going to train just new teachers. We're going to require training of all teachers in the state. At this point, the state school superintendent, Dr. Carrie Wright, a dear friend, they started moving more on this and launched regional professional development coordinators. And then they did a study that found 10 times more emphasis on phonics and teacher prep courses, but textbook material still drove K-12 instruction. So, and then they, of course, did early learning. Now, obviously, you see in Georgia, we already have some of these pieces. It's a matter of actually bringing them together. Dr. Wright, at this point also, the State Department of Ed took over, sort of, the professional development that was going on statewide. Basically what that meant was, and I'm paraphrasing what Carrie told a group of our board a couple of years ago, she said, we had very high expectations. We had requirements of what PD was being given. If people weren't doing it, we fired them and went and found somebody else that would do a better job. So there was a lot of accountability. There was a task force that called on professors to know and teach the latest reading science, literacy courses for early ed, special ed, and principals, so that when principals go into these classrooms, they know what to look for. 2016, family guides for student successes, translating math and reading standards for parents. In other words, there was the recognition, very much as Senator Setzler said earlier, that communities and families actually need to be more engaged in this. And by the way, I would also share with you as a side note, West Virginia has actually taken the Imagination Library with Dolly Parton statewide, and it is actually a line item in their budget. They did exemplar units, lessons in math and for grades K-12. In 2017, a study found the major achievement gains in target schools with literacy coaches. So again, notice the cycle. A decision's made, a policy is made, a study is done. Is this making a difference? Access for All Guide helped educators address students' academic, physical, speech, social, emotional learning, behavioral difficulties in 2019. And here's the outcome. This is Mississippi's reading scores on the National Assessment of Educational Progress. From 2009, they were at 22% were proficient. Okay, now this is proficient. This is not basic. This is actually proficient. You can see where the country was at 32%, the southern region was at 29%, but now look at what's happened over the course of time. Now, obviously, COVID had an impact in 2022, but they are one of the few states that actually held pace with what was going on at the national and at the regional level. Now, here's the thing. Not only did this happen in reading, look at what happened to their math. It actually followed suit. Their math actually progressed along with their reading. Now, again, obviously you can tell in 2022 that that's the effects of COVID. So the focus that was here, and also the realization that they had in Mississippi, that not only was reading critical, but the other subjects were also important as they were entryways into reading, into learning to read, and in reading to learn. So areas like science that really bring, and there's a lot of studies out there that show that science also helps bring, especially some young boys who typically are not as engaged with reading. So I thought I would also just share with you a few other things that are going on around the region. That was the Mississippi story, but there's some other initiatives that are going on too. Alabama has a big reading initiative, but this is almost 2.0 for Alabama. So there was a time under State Superintendent Joe Morgan and Catherine Mitchell that was really the impetus for what we did in Georgia around our Reading First program back in the mid-2000s. They showed incredible gains until they got to a certain point, and then the money left and they sort of regressed. In Georgia, a lot of people don't remember, but around 2007 and 2008, we actually were leading the whole country in the amount of gain that we were seeing in reading. But then the Reading First money ran out. So they're we kind of swayed a little bit. The difference between other states and Mississippi is Mississippi held that focus the entire time. Carolina Education Cabinet is actually an independent panel that's chaired by the governor, and it consists of the president of the UNC system, the state superintendent, and they are around focused on education issues, of which literacy is one of those. Ready, Read, Write West Virginia recognizes that writing is also as important as reading, as the skills that are necessary to be able to flourish. So this was launched just earlier this year. We're watching it to see how this goes and to see what kind of gains that they get. Florida has actually been at this for a while. There's been specific use of evidence-based reading instruction for a long time. And there's a detailed role of school and district administration, professional development, assessment, curriculum, a pretty big role by Florida at the state level. The South Carolina Read to Succeed Act, this required the State Department of Education with the state board's approval to develop, implement, evaluate, and continually refine a comprehensive state plan for pre-kindergarten through grade 12. I think the thing to learn here, and this is where South Carolina got their idea and also where Tennessee got theirs, is this was not a scattershot approach. This was not something where a bunch of different agencies and a bunch of different folks said, hey, let's go try this. There was a coherent, we have this goal and we're going to move it this direction. So, what we can learn here is setting ambitious goals first matters. Knowing what we want out of a set of programs, setting a North Star for where we want our state to go. Then evaluating what levels of funding and other elements are required to reach your goals. So Mississippi has a 3rd grade, 5th grade promotion retention, just like Georgia does. The difference is that they also, well, not the difference because Georgia's doing a lot of this too, but one of the things that Mississippi had a commitment to was the wraparound services of what happens when a student doesn't make it. What do we do? If we just simply retain them and say it louder and slower, it didn't matter as much. So training specific people on how do you remediate students. Those types of things were huge. Seeking solutions and constantly assessing progress is a real key. That is, as whatever you do happens, and whatever legislation you choose to put forth, I would strongly recommend that you think about what questions do you want answered as this progresses. What kind of feedback, what kind of data needs to come back to you? And then have the courage to change. Mississippi was doing the PD. They found it was not making the difference it wanted in certain areas. So like I said, Dr. Wright said, you're not getting the job done. We're going to change. They found during their course of their trajectory over the last 20 years, there were things that just simply didn't work. And they were able to admit, this didn't work, it's time for us to move on. So, I did a whole lot in a real short period of time. I hope that was useful, and we are always happy and thrilled to come and support you guys at any time, as we are just down the road from you.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. I've got one question for you in regards to Mississippi. I know we're doing some of the things that they've implemented since 1997. Out of the many different things that they've implemented, is there anything that we're not doing that you kind of see as the number one thing we should try to implement?
I think that probably what I would say is that what Mississippi did was they had a coalition that happened between the branches of government and the agencies within those branches to constantly monitor and have dialogue around why things are the way they are and what do we need to change them. And it's not, and I think that we have, like the Alliance of Agency Heads here, we have other aspects of that, but it's not as clear to the outside as what Mississippi was doing, because what happened with them was every time there was a change in governor or a change in legislators or whatever, there was always this is our mission and we're not going to deviate from it. And it's not as clear whether Georgia has that or not.
Somewhat like a education commission type?
Something like that. I mean, you don't want to create a shadow DOE, but at the same time, somebody that kind of becomes the institutional historical knowledge, but also the driver for change.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just wanted a quick question. My background is I was state juvenile probation. And so I'm done with, I felt like I was an educator, but it was more of behavioral educating, teaching behavior. And so my question is what I see so many similarities in that and this. I mean, I truly do. But my question is in the back of my mind through all of this is, just going back to 30 years, how do you engage parents that, I don't mean to be blunt, but there's no other way, are just selfish? They care more about themselves than they do their own child. So how do you overcome that?
So the reason I say that education is like rocket science, or is easier than rocket science, is because of that human factor. I mean, I don't know that there is a way or a single way to figure that out. What we have seen and what I personally have experienced when I was state superintendent in Kentucky was it had to be a coordinated effort at the state level to work with localities to get that done. Because, you know, when I would go to, you know, Eastern Kentucky, they were like, yeah, that's the commissioner, but we don't know him. We want to talk to somebody next door. So in Kentucky, they actually created, and I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on what the full acronym means, but it's FRISKIES, and it was a Family Resource Youth something. I can't remember what it was, but their role was to work. There was a Frisky coordinator in each school. I know. Trust me, this is like the SOLs in Virginia, okay? But what happened was they had a coordinator in each of the schools, and in each of those schools, their job was to work with parents and to work with especially students in poverty to get them to meet the needs that they had. So in some cases, the kid shows up on Friday, opens their locker, and there's actually food for the weekend in there. But in a lot of the cases, it was holding forums, teaching parents, how do you actually need to help your kid who's struggling in reading? How do you help them if they're struggling in math? Because there's a trust factor there, because the people that were hired for those jobs were people who lived and worked in those communities. So I don't know that there's an easy answer to that, because as long as we deal with human nature, we're always going to deal with the quirks of human nature. But I do think that one of the things that we've seen is that while things need to be coordinated at a state level to make sure everybody's staying on mark, and there's a magic to having people who live in the community who can be that champion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You may be the funniest superintendent or former superintendent that I've ever met.
Well, I'm a former chemistry teacher, and so, you know, you had to learn to be funny for the kids to pay attention to you. Either that or blow stuff up, and you know,
Either one of them work.
I went into policy maybe to blow that stuff up, but we'll see.
Thank you. We've got one more question for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I've really enjoyed working with you guys this summer. They have an excellent program, and we were right here in Atlanta, Georgia, and missed a lot of our educators that were not at the table to receive some of this information. Alignment. What I hear from all of the different folks that are coming, got a program over here, got a program over there, if that program doesn't work, then we got a program over there, and we are paying for it. The investment that we put into education in this state, it's the hugest part of it's the biggest part of the budget. It's the biggest, but where is the return on investment? Where's the return? And just sitting here and listening to the amount of money that Risa spent and this one spent and that one spent, and I'm not, poo-pooing on anybody's whatever you want to do, but we don't have the kind of time. The children don't have the kind of time. We do, we can read. But the children don't have that kind of time to wait for analysis of research and analysis of that. And when are we going to align this stuff so that we can train teachers and leaders, because that's what we lack a lot of, leadership, and get to work with what we need to get to work with in this state. That's my concern. It's not a question. Just wanted to say thank you so much for bringing this to the forefront. But every year we sign off on this big ticket budget. And last week, the chancellor told us about all the different programs that we have in this state that we use for reading and this and that. And we still have such a very, very low percentage rate of we're not there. So we need some help.
Well, and as you heard at our summer meeting, there's a magic to data, and the questions that get asked about what do you want to know about the effectiveness of things. And I will say that was one of the things Mississippi did well.
Yeah.
Is that they said, we're going to show leadership, and we're going to quit doing things that's not working and continue doing things that are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that, we will wrap up this meeting. We've got another meeting tomorrow in 307 in the Coverdale building. Across the street, it'll be at 2 p.m. Look forward to that agenda tomorrow. But thank you all so much for coming. The speakers, thank you all very much for coming. We're getting fed from a fire hose, I guess, lack of a better word, but grateful for your time. It's been very enlightening. Thank you.
We adjourn.
We're adjourned.